Yeah, so the next question is coming from pretty much everyone that's watching is when will you list my coin? So they want to know just generally, I guess more about the listing process.
Yeah, so I wrote a very simple blog post on LinkedIn. I think 4 years ago. 3 years ago. Um, but very fundamentally, there's a couple of things I can summarize. If you search for Binance CZ Binance listing tips, you can probably find it. It's a LinkedIn article. Not much have changed. The number one thing we look for is number of users. So if a project or if something have a large number of users, it has value. So that's utility value. So it's a very simple thing to do. That's the most simple thing to judge. So if a project has millions of users, every exchange is going to want to list it because we want that liquidity. We want those users. If you don't have users, then it becomes much trickier. Well, actually, let's stay on the users for a second. How you define users is a little bit tricky. Do you define as a number of active addresses on the blockchain? Do you define as a number of active transactions on blockchain? Do you look at Twitter followers? Do you look at share of voice on social media? There are various ways to measure that. Do you look at Facebook followers? Do you look at Telegram group size? And do you look at developer code commits? So there's a number of those things that we could look at. But we actually look at all of them. It's easy to fake one or two numbers. It's relatively difficult to fake every number. So that's the number one thing we look at. If you don't have users, then for Binance, we take a very, very cautious approach for listing relatively new projects. We do look at team, we do look at founder history, we do look at product market fit, concept market fit, but those things are much, much weaker. We like projects with users. We do list, but there's a few things that doesn't really help. Shilling coins on Twitter to me, asking me to list coins in my tweet comments, those things don't help. They actually don't help at all. I'm not really in charge of listing. Our listing team don't look at my Twitter comments. They don't count that as number of users. That doesn't help. What's more helpful is to help the project team get more real users. And have them apply to Binance. So that's really the best way. I know, look, the listing coins is a very subjective thing. Everyone have their own favorite project that they invested in, so they probably hold a bag of it. We are listing more and more coins, and we're listing coins relatively aggressively. But look, we have our evaluation methods. We have our standards. It's for Binance.com. It is a centralized exchange, so we do have a centralized team handling the listing process. We do not typically let outside people contact our listing team to remove any potential bias, etc. So we don't provide a contact person. We actually don't have a transparent process. The best way is to submit the listing form and then provide all the information on that form, and then hope to hear back from us. Normal 99% of the time you don't. That's just based on the numbers. There is a large number of projects who wants to list on Binance. That's a fact. But we are very, very selective. We want to make sure that we list solid projects. Even with our really strict selection process, many projects do fail. That's just any new industry, any new startup. Internet is like that. Every new industry is like that. So do keep in mind that if you, some people have a strategy to buy every coin we list. If you do that, I do recommend you to manage your risks properly, so that you spread your basket. You spread your basket somewhat. The different risk management strategies you can use if you want to do that. But I wouldn't recommend you going all in on every single new coin that we list. I wouldn't recommend people going all in on coins usually anyway, unless you know those projects really, really well. So so that's kind of in a very nutshell our listing sort of process. There's a lot more details, of course, and I want to also advise that this shilling projects on Twitter, there's also a pressuring Binance to list and saying bad things about Binance to pressure us to list. When you step over those boundaries, the project gets on a blacklist and we don't list it. We never succumb to pressure like that. So I advise people to not to do that. We also strictly forbid people promising their users they're going to list on Binance or projecting or indicating they will list on Binance before they list on Binance. So we treat listing on Binance as a very confidential event until it happens. For any project applied, we ask for a one-way NDA, so the project cannot disclose any information to anybody else. If they do, then they violate that contract, and we usually either delay the listing process, very often indefinitely. So we basically cancel that listing. So if you hear any project saying that they will list on Binance, etc., you can pretty much assume they won't. That's kind of our listing process in a nutshell. So I hope that's some information to a lot of the new users on our platform.